Hi and welcome to this Texturino tutorial. I'm Alice and this episode will explain how to use the Texture Tool annotation. The Texture Tool annotation allows you to intuitively adjust the opacity, scale and rotation of your textures. Overall wheel cover, scale and auto cover enabled, rotation, opacity and blending modes, followed by absolute and relative texture positioning. I've recycled this stock artwork by applying simple watercolour textures. If I select one of the dresses, which is made up of vector shapes, which I've grouped, you'll see that my current texture shows correctly but with no annotation. In order to edit my texture, I need to activate the Texture tool, or you could click on the effect in the Appearance panel. This interface is probably familiar to users of stylism. The first arm is Scale, which has this little arrow icon. If I drag the arrow icon inwards, you'll see the texture scales down. The grey box showing us the texture bounds. If you're using a repeating texture, the bounds will be dashed. Related to this, if I hover over this AC icon, it tells me that auto cover is enabled. Which means if I were to make the texture bound smaller than the selection I'm applying it to, it will snap to the smallest size possible while still covering our selection. So if we were to turn this off, you'll see the problem. Let's put auto cover back on. AC enabled is great if you end up editing your artwork at a later point. If I lengthen my dress, it updates to cover that new size. Rotation works in much the same way, but instead you need to click and drag the rotation arm to position. I can even use the Shift key to constrain the angle of the rotation. Notice how the auto cover is kicking in to increase the texture size to match the overall height of the selection. Like the scale, the opacity is controlled by a slider. This time the icon is made up of two semicircles, alongside the opacity modes in the drop-down menu. So I'm happy with those settings. The last setting is absolute and relative positioning. When editing the path of a shape with a texture applied, absolute positioning best ensures the texture doesn't stretch or shift with changes in object size. And remember, if large enough, the texture can be repositioned by dragging. All of these settings can be input numerically. Just double-click on the slider icons. A few things worth mentioning. Firstly, if you don't group artwork, the texture annotation will show for each and every object in your selection. So if I apply this texture to these ungrouped shapes, you'll see what I mean, which could be a little overwhelming. The red annotation is the current texture you're editing. Also, the texture will be applied separately on each object rather than as a whole. Let's change artwork for the next one. You might find that the selection annotations obscure your view of the texture, making it difficult to edit accurately. In this case, go to View and Hide Edges in order to get a clear view of what you're doing. And then to the last point. If the annotation becomes lost amongst the artwork, then you can change the colour in the preferences to something with more contrast. That's it for this tutorial. Overall, we've covered scale and auto cover enabled, rotation, opacity and blending modes, and absolute and relative texture positioning. Watch the next video to find out how to overlay texture using Texturino and an opacity mask. All our plugins are available for free trial via our website astutegraphics.com.